The Zephyrian armada stretched across the void like a plague of metal locusts, their obsidian hulls drinking in the light of distant stars. Fleet Admiral Kethvar gazed through the crystalline viewport of his flagship, the World Render, and felt the familiar surge of superiority that had carried his species to dominance across 17 sectors. "Sensors confirm, Admiral," his tactical officer hissed through mandible clicks. "The human colony of New Olympia lies directly ahead. Population, 12 million. Defensive capabilities, negligible." Kethvar's compound eyes gleamed. Humans, such a young species, barely 3 centuries since their first primitive rocket had escaped their gravity well. They had spread like wildfire across nearby systems, establishing colonies with the reckless abandon of children playing with toys they didn't understand. Today, that naivety would cost them everything. "Begin the standard intimidation protocol," Kethvar commanded. "Open all frequencies." The transmission crackled to life across New Olympia's communication networks. Kethvar's image, 8 feet of chitinous magnificence topped with a crown of razor-sharp sensory spines, filled every screen on the planet. "Humans of New Olympia," his voice resonated with the authority of a species that had conquered worlds before Earth's sun had finished forming its planets. "You have witnessed the might of the Zephyrian armada. 3,000 vessels of war block out your stars. Your pathetic defensive fleet numbers fewer than 200 ships. Surrender now, and your deaths will be swift." The response came faster than expected. A human face appeared on screen, weathered, scarred, with steel-gray eyes that held no trace of fear. The nameplate read, "Admiral Sarah Chen, New Olympia Defense Force." "Admiral Kethvar, right?" Chen's voice carried an odd note of amusement. "We received your resume. 17 conquered sectors, 43 species subjugated, 300 billion sentients under your boot. Impressive numbers." Kethvar preened at the acknowledgement of his accomplishments. Chen continued, "But here's the thing about humans you might have missed in your intelligence reports. We don't do surrender, we do math." "Math?" Kethvar's translator struggled with what seemed to be a colloquialism. "Simple arithmetic, really. You've got 3,000 ships out there, nice and clustered together like you're at a parade. We've got 173 vessels, should be a massacre." Chen's smile was razor-thin. "For you." Before Kethvar could respond, his sensor officer shrieked in alarm. "Admiral, energy signatures spiking across the human fleet, they're—" The first human ship exploded, not from enemy fire, but from some internal detonation that sent brilliant, white fire cascading through its hull. Then the second. Then the third. Within moments, the entire human defensive fleet was nothing but expanding clouds of superheated gas and twisted metal. "What manner of cowardice is this?" Kethvar roared. "They destroy their own ships rather than face us in battle?" His communications officer's voice trembled. "Sir, we're receiving another transmission." Admiral Chen reappeared, now speaking, from what appeared to be a heavily reinforced bunker deep beneath New Olympia's surface. Her smile had widened. "Sorry about the fireworks," she said conversationally. "But we needed to clear the field for what comes next. See those ships you just watched explode? They weren't our defense fleet. They were our delivery system." Kethvar felt his primary stomach clench. Delivery system for what? For the 43 million self-guided kinetic penetrators we just seeded throughout your formation. Each one about the size of a human thumb, moving at 15% light speed, and programmed with the structural schematics of every Zephyrian vessel class in our databases. The Admiral's compound eyes swiveled to his tactical display. Thousands of tiny contacts were indeed scattered throughout his fleet. Too small and fast for point defense systems, too numerous to track individually. "Impossible," he whispered. "No species has such technology." Chen's expression turned predatory. "Admiral, you've conquered a lot of species, but here's what you never learned. Some races develop by conquering others. Humans develop by preparing to fight things that should be impossible to kill. For 3 centuries, we've been asking ourselves one question. What do you do when something bigger, stronger and more advanced than you once you dead. The first kinetic penetrator struck the world render amidships, punching through 12 feet of battle-hardened armor plating like it was tissue paper. Then the second struck. The third. Across the vast expanse of the Zephyrian formation, 3,000 warships began coming apart as tiny projectiles moving at relativistic speeds turned their proud hulls into Swiss cheese. We spent decades perfecting the math, Chen continued, her voice now barely audible over the sound of alarms screaming through the world render. Trajectory calculations, timing sequences, structural weak point analysis. We knew someday something like your armada would come calling. We just had to figure out how to turn your greatest strength, your numbers, into your greatest weakness. Kithvar watched in horror as ship after ship in his mighty fleet succumbed to the devastating micro-projectile swarm. The world render shuddered as another penetrator found its fusion core housing. You destroyed your own fleet, he managed to gasp out. Expendable drones, Chen corrected. Remote-operated shells built around our kinetic payload delivery systems. The real new Olympia Defense Force? She gestured upward. They're in stealth orbit above you, recording everything for the textbooks. As the world render's structural integrity finally gave way, Admiral Kethvar had time for one last thought. In all his campaigns of conquest, across all the species he had ground beneath his heel, none had ever turned his own tactical doctrine against him so completely. The explosion that consumed the Zephyrian flagship lit up New Olympia's night sky like a brief, brilliant star. When it faded, nothing remained of the mighty armada but expanding debris fields and a harsh lesson that would echo across the galaxy. Humans didn't see superior numbers as overwhelming odds. They saw target-rich environments. In the defense bunker, Admiral Chen turned to her communications officer. Send a message to Earth Command. Tell them the new kinetic swarm doctrine works exactly as advertised, and start drafting the technical specifications for release to our allies. She paused, looking up at the starfield where moments before, death itself had blotted out the sky. Turns out 3,000 ships aren't so impressive when they're all flying in formation.